Today's video is all about bringing you guys the newest Korean builds to try out and win your games with. It's important to point out that with a huge shift in the meta from those Cinder Hulk and Bomby Cinder and Sunfire changes, we're going to see a ton of experimentation and a lot of things changing. But right now, these are what's the most popular and new on the Korean server in high elo. So make sure you smash that like button, destroy the sub button, and let's jump right in. First things first, let's talk about Diana, who's been a very strong champion for quite some time now. However, her builds have been shuffling around a decent bit, and now her two previously best items are not even bought anymore. Diana players really loved going Nashers and Rod of Ages in almost every game they could, but now we see almost everybody going Proto Belt, Sork Shoes, Zanyas, Morellonomicon, Banshees, and Rabadons. And the order of some of the items might change around. Occasionally we see players taking Morellos before Zanyas, but that really just depends on how hard are you actually face rolling your opponent. Do you need the defense? Maybe make something more defensive like Zanyas second instead of Morello second. That's pretty much the deal that's going on there. On top of that, they're still taking similar runes, however there is a couple changes. Because you're no longer ever getting mana in your items anymore, people are taking Conqueror, Presence of Mind, Legend Alacrity, Coup de Grace, Taste of Blood, and Ravenous Hunter. The Presence of Mind really makes up for your lack of mana, as every time you get a takedown, you're going to be restoring a ton and increasing your maximum by that much more. Over the course of the game, it basically equates to a fully stacked Rod of Ages, which is super valuable. And if having that maximum mana wasn't already enough, every single time Presence of Mind is going to be giving you that much more steam anytime you get one of those takedowns. It'll keep you going and going for as long as you need. Of course, the Legend Alacrity is always up for question. If the enemy team has tons of CC, well, just take free tenacity. There's no reason not to. And on top of that, let's talk about that Coup de Grace for a moment. Diana is a champion who does do a lot of damage and usually focuses on squishy targets. But with the new patch rolling on in and the tanks coming in hot with those new Cinder changes, you really need to watch out because you're probably gonna have games where you should definitely be taking Cut Down rather than Coup de Grace or Last Stand. It's just so powerful against people who stack health on health on health. And this goes for all the builds that we cover here. I'll be mentioning it every time just so that you guys don't have any chance of forgetting. And let's not forget to move on to our next champion, Jax. Now, there's not really very much changing in the runes here. However, there are new items that are being tried out and a lot of really cool experimentation. The standard runes are Conqueror, Triumph, Legend Tenacity, Last Stand, Magical Footwear, and Time Warp Tonic. This is tried and tested and really strong on Jax. However, the items, you're going to be looking at Triforce first. As almost always, it's one of the best items that Jax can build. But then, Death Stance second, then pick up your boots, either Tabbies or Merc Treads depending on the enemy team, Rage Blade, Sterix Gauge, and Guardian's Angel. And there's a little bit of a caveat here. When we're talking about Sterix Gauge, we've been seeing some players go Phantom Dancer, a lot like how they've been trying with Set, because the shield is similar and the stats are also very powerful. Here, Jax really uses Phantom Dancer pretty well, as the ghosted effect is awesome and movement speed on him is really crucial. This also kind of focuses you more for split pushing rather than team fighting, and with more and more tanks becoming relevant thanks to all the buffs that they're getting, we're going to be probably seeing this become more and more prominent. But of course, don't discount Jax in any team fight. If he manages to get a flank on the enemy backline or even just really has a nice game in general, he's no joke of a team fighter even when compared to some of the best tanks right now. Yeah, he's not going to be the one to kill them, but he isn't a pushover, and he's definitely solid no matter where you're going to be playing him. It's just with the buffs, it's a little bit spooky, as he might be having a tougher time getting out of lane, and that can make all the difference for a champion like Jax who scales very well. And in case some of you might be wondering, how does Jax deal with a tank in the side lane? Well, the second and third items are exactly your answers. Death Stance is incredibly powerful for its sustain and damage mitigation, which essentially directly counters tanks who usually have just enough damage to kill somebody in time before they can really turn the heat back onto them. However, when you're going Triforce Death Stance, what's a tank gonna do to you if you can just lifesteal off of them? Okay, they build Bramble Vest, sure, but then you get a Rage Blade as a third item, and now you have good health, a lot of healing, tons of damage on both sides because you have AP and AD, which also gives you even more resistances from your ultimate, and you have penetration of all kinds. Well, you can kind of see how this snowballs into a pretty decent situation for our purple eggplant helicopter. To find more guides on the Eggplant, or Diana, or any other champion, or any skill for that matter, make sure you go check out our website GameLeap.com. Everything that we have up there is made by challenger level players, and we're always trying to make more and better content so that you guys can stay at your A game and winning. No matter what rank you are, League is not an easy game, and there's a lot of things out of your control. However, you are in control of exactly what you do, and to make yourself as best as you possibly can to give you the best chance of winning, make sure you go check us out. Next up, let's talk about Varus, and let's point out that this counts for both mid lane and bot lane. This is really more of an old build making a sort of new comeback with a couple of twists in there. However, it's still really strong. And if you didn't know by now, we're talking about full lethality Varus. I've actually had a couple games with it recently, and oh my god, it's terrifying. You know, you're just walking along in the jungle, clearing some wards, helping out your support maybe, and then you just see this arrow of doom fly by you and smash your support's head in for like 3/4 of their health bar, and you're just like, what do I do? There's no counterplay. Anyways, for runes, you're going to be taking Arcane Comet with Mana Flow Ban, Transcendence, Scorch, Presence of Mind, and Coup de Grace. Now, remember that rule that we talked about, where you might be looking to take cut down with all the new Balmy Cinder changes? And on top of that, Presence of Mind is really carrying the build here, because it allows you to go the items that you want. Manamune eventually turns into Muramana, and that thing eats up mana like nobody's business. So having Presence of Mind to give you even more maximum mana to up the damage that it's going to be doing, and restore the mana that you're consuming is really, really important. Then you'll be going into Lucidity Boots almost every single time, and from there you're going to be going Yumu's, Mortal Reminder, Edge of Night, and Death Stance. And you might want to consider getting the Edge of Night before the Mortal Reminder, or even the Mortal Reminder before a Yumu's if you really feel like you need something like Grievous Wounds, or you really need that spell shield. The build is actually really flexible, and that's part of why it's so strong. You can adapt to a lot of the different lanes that you're playing in and team comps that you're playing against. Oh yeah, and don't forget that obviously you can swap out that Mortal Reminder for a Lord Dominic's Regards if you see the enemy team is running 5 champions with Balmy Cinder, because that's just the right thing to do to punish them for their sins. No matter what the future holds for Varus, he's definitely going to be relevant with all the tank buffs coming in. He's always bringing that percentage max health damage to the table, and that's really big for dealing with those big tanky champions. On top of that, he's got huge poke to deal with the backline that comes behind them, so he's going to be a solid pick no matter what build or what lane you play him in. Next up, we're going to be talking about Orianna. For those of you who caught our last Korean builds video, you might be remembering when we talked about GLP Syndra, and well, what do you know? It's spread to other control and long-range mages, like Orianna. Right now, people are building GLP on her and using it to basically never miss any of their skill shots. GLP has a surprisingly long range, and it can allow an Orianna to catch somebody out from even further than she normally could before. And on top of that, if she forces them to use mobility, she can continue chasing them and then hit them with it right afterwards anyways. It's pretty much a win-win no matter what scenario it is, unless you have some big beef ball blocking your way. Your items are going to be looking like Sorc Shoes every single time that you can, GLP, Morellos, Rabadons, Banshee's Veil, and Liandry's. This gives you a ton of damage and a lot of catch potential. You're running double magic penetration, which will easily allow you to melt squishies. You get the huge burst in AP from Rabadons, the defensiveness of the Banshee shield, and the movement speed that you already have from your W, and then put it all on top and get a Liandry's in there so that when you hit anybody with your W, they're burning in endless agony. But if for some reason you decided that that GLP slow is not enough for you, and that you're still having some problems relating to catching people out or just getting away from things in general, have no fear, because Phase Rush is here. Take that Phase Rush and get a Mana Flow on top with Transcendence, Scorch, Taste of Blood, and Ravenous Hunter. This makes your laning and your late game actually ridiculous. The movement speed from just hitting somebody with GLP and like QW is absurd. You never have to use your W defensively almost ever, because you're just better off QWing somebody and then Eing back to yourself, getting the Phase Rush proc and running out with that. On top of that, you got Taste of Blood for sustain, Ravenous Hunter for sustain, Scorch for poke every time you hit somebody with something, Transcendence lets you scale better, and Mana Flow will just help you stay healthy in mana in terms of the rest of the game. And you're building mana in the GLP, so you don't need that much. You're not going to have to run that Presence of Mind that a lot of other builds are liking right now, because the item is already so good for you that you have no reason to do otherwise. This is one of those situations where you might be thinking like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but it's definitely broke, and you're not the one fixing it, so abuse it while you can. Next champ we're going to be taking a look at is Graves, and this one is like full-on throwback build, looking back like over a year and a half ago, where Graves was building a really heavy tank buster build that scaled super hard. For runes, you're going to be looking at Fleet Footwork, Overheal, Legend Tenacity, or Legend Alacrity if the enemy team doesn't have a lot of CC, Coup de Grace, and then Nimbus Cloak and Water Walking. Of course, the Coup de Grace could be changed out for a cut down if you're facing an absolute abundance of tanks because of those buffs that we're talking about over and over again, because they're ridiculously broken. But in terms of items, you're going back to the old Skirmishing Warrior with Tabbies or Merc Treads depending on the enemy team, then pick up that Black Cleaver, Phantom Dancer, Mortal Reminder, or Lord Dominic's Regards, depending on the enemy team, and then a Guardian's Angel. In this case, deciding between Mortal Reminder and Lord Dominic's Regards can actually be pretty tough, but generally the way it's gonna go is that if you trust your team, then you probably just go Lord Dominic's Regards, because Morellonomicon and other items like that are really popular right now to stop people from healing. However, if you notice that your teammates have full-length bananas for fingers, then maybe you consider going a Mortal Reminder just so that you can make sure the right targets have reduced healing. Outside of that though, your last item on Graves could be pretty much anything. Guardian's Angel, Death's Dance, just whatever you do. Make sure you're not buying something like a Maw, which directly coincides with the passive on your Phantom Dancer. That's a mistake that a lot of people make, and it's pretty troll. Our last champion for today is gonna be Camille, and while the items aren't really changing, there's been a lot of variation in runes recently, and especially with all the tanks coming up, that kinda makes sense, as Camille doesn't necessarily have the best early game, and she can get abused by a couple of counter matchups really hard. This change of rune kinda makes sense and is more precautionary than anything. If you feel like your lane can really go badly very quickly, then you're better off taking these. You're looking at Grasp of the Undying, Shield Bash, Bone Plating, Overgrowth, Mana Flow Band, and Transcendence. These runes are very much focused on your longevity. Grasp is great for trading in lane and will keep you healthier than pretty much any other rune could against oppressive laners. On top of that, Shield Bash will make you tankier anytime you get your shield and make you do more damage. Bone Plating is nice for those quick short trades that we're talking about right now, and Overgrowth will help you scale into the late game with the amount of health that you have over the course of the lane in the game. And then from there, Mana Flow is amazing for your longevity in lane and out of lane for its mana sustain, and Transcendence is really powerful as every point of cooldown reduction that you can get is really important. All of Camille's abilities are super impactful and incredibly powerful in basically any scenario, so you want to make sure that you have them up as fast as you possibly can, and if you end up oversampling on CDR, that's fine because you're getting bonus stats anyways. Normally, we don't talk about the tiny little runes that give you some stats in the early game, however, because we're talking about that CDR scaling, let's mention the fact that a lot of these players are taking the CDR scaling rune rather than the attack speed, and this clearly represents a focus on scaling and farming safely in lane rather than focusing on just harassing the opponent over and over again. It's a very small but conscious decision that really dictates what people's goals are in these games. Those tiny runes are meant for you to flex around what kind of defenses or runes you're taking into certain lanes so that you can have the best, build possible. If you're going into like an assassin, you have the option of taking double armor, or if you're going into an AP laner, you could take double AP, or if you're going into, a tank, you could just take health and scale if you really wanted, whatever you want. But here, almost every single time, they're taking that CDR scaling. So they're not just directly banking on winning the early game through their attack speed or relying on it to CS or anything like that. They're relying on the fact that they're going to be incredibly powerful the later the game goes on, and every single level they gain makes them that much stronger. And that's all the builds that we've got for you guys today. To get some guides on how to learn or play these champions, or guides just to help you in general, make sure you go check out our website, GameLeap.com. We have guides on almost all the champions that we've covered in this video, and we're always working on more and better content to bring you more and more guides on champions, generic skills, or just laning tips in general. Everything that we have is made by challenger level players, so you know that you're getting the best guidance and tips possible to get yourself to your A game. Make sure you let us know what you want us to work on next, so that way we can get right to what you guys want as soon as we possibly can. If you made it this far, thanks for watching the whole video. Have any of you guys been ahead of the curve? Have you found these builds before the Koreans did? I just know that I'm really excited for 10.4, as that might mean the return of my very unique Jax build, and that's gonna be a ton of fun. Anyways, as always, my name is Ace Windstorm, and I will see you all later.